Hello, everyone. This is the first in a series of little messages that I wanted to send out to you on the gospel for the following Sunday. And it's a way for me to engage and encounter you and to share with the gospel. And I'm thinking especially for those who, for health reasons, either for themselves or for others that are remaining at home at this present time. And I wanted to make this effort to engage and encounter you and also to share about the gospel for the following week. So as we get into it, this is the first Sunday of Lent, this following Sunday, and the Sunday gospel is, as usual, on the first Sunday of Lent. It's on the temptation of Jesus in the desert, when Jesus goes out for 40 days in the desert and is tempted by Satan. This year's Gospels, they come from the Gospel of Mark, and so it's taken from Mark, and it's the shortest version, really, of this temptation. It's really just a couple of phrases. Jesus goes out for 40 days and is tempted by Satan, and he's ministered by the angels, and he deals with the beasts. That's basically what it says. So it doesn't go into more of the detail like the other Gospels, as in Matthew and Luke, where it talks about Jesus, being tempted by hunger, really by hunger, and being tempted to turn the stones into bread, and he denies that. And then he's also tempted to be thrown down to throw himself down from the temple top. Satan takes him up on the top of the temple, and he says, well, if you're God, well, throw yourself down from here. And then also finally he shows Jesus all the kingdoms, and he says, well, if you want these kingdoms, you can bow down and adore me. And so really this Sunday is about the beginning of Lent, and it really touches the temptations of Jesus, and more largely we can think about temptations in our own life. What are our temptations? But more fundamentally, I'd like to reflect on what is the root of these temptations. What's the root of these temptations? And I'd like to propose something today. I would like to say that the root of all our temptations is our own sense of self-inadequacy, that we feel inadequate. And because we feel inadequate, we want to make up for that, so we compensate in some ways. I think that's really the fundamental root of every temptation, is our own self-inadequacy and the feeling that we're just not good enough. And so I think that's the root of all. Maybe why do we eat when we're not supposed to? Maybe because we're feeling a little depressed and we want something to boost us up, or we're not feeling like we have enough joy or happiness in our lives, so we turn to food. Perhaps we don't feel good about our appearance and the way we look, so we turn towards sexual fantasies and other sexual proclivities because we don't feel good about the way we look. Or perhaps we don't feel good about how we are, and so we overachieve, or we try to overplease, or we try to people please, and we try to cater to other people's needs. And so we try to sell ourselves because we don't feel good enough about who we are. I think for every temptation and for every difficulty that lies there, I think there's ultimately a sense of our own inadequacy. We just don't feel like we're good enough, and we have to prove ourselves to other people. And we have to make up for what our own self-sense of what we lack in our lives or lack about us. So, and it's interesting because today, if we go back to the second reading, it's from the second epistle, the second letter of Saint Peter. And so there we read about him talking about Noah and the ark, about how they were saved in the ark from the flood. And the ark is often an image. We hear about the Ark of the Covenant. We know that Mary, our Blessed Mother, is the Ark of the Covenant. And so we can seek a refuge in her, in Mary, as a source of support for us in our temptations. So turn to Mary as a support. We also think of the church as being an ark. It is an ark itself, and so we have support in the church. And so ultimately, though, I think we have to turn towards God himself, and we have to turn to Jesus, and we have to know that each and every one of us was made in the image of likeness of God, that we are all precious in the eyes of God. We are something special to God. And I think that's the greatest way of overcoming temptations, is going back and reflecting and understanding how much we matter to God, how much we are valued by God, how much we are appreciated by God as we are. And when we understand that God's at our back, that He's there with us, I think that gives us a tremendous power against the temptations, against those weaknesses that Satan often prays for. So let us go back and find in God our strength and find in Him the power to overcome these temptations, knowing that each and every one of us was made individually and particularly, and we're called to be that saint that we are called to be. Not as saint as anybody else is, but we are called to be the particular saint that we are called to be. And let us find our strength in God and knowing that with Him we can overcome every temptation. Because yes, we are good enough. Yes, we are made to be great. Yes, we are made for heaven. And go back to God and find in Him and saying that, yes, I am awesome in the eyes of God. That's not pride. That's not superiority. That's something true that, yes, you are awesome in the eyes of God. And we have to own that, and we have to engage that, and we have to realize that in our lives. So I'd encourage you all to take on the strength of God and find your strength in Him, and to be able to overcome every temptation during this Lenten season.